Happy Sunday, y'all. I thought we would start this day off by talking about something near and dear to my heart. Ankle mobility. Oh, great, everybody left. Come back. No, this stuff's serious. It's the reason why we can't hit depth while we're squatting, and there's a whole host of reasons. But here's a little test you can do to see how mobile your ankles are. Set up about a foot away from a straight up and down object, and just try to touch it with your knee. And keeping your feet flat. If your foot comes up off the ground, your heel comes up off the ground, it means you got some work to do in the ankle mobility area. And don't feel bad, because most people do, including myself. And that's the reason, why we wear squat shoes. Those little ramps on it kind of make that difference up. They provide you a nice little stable platform. I'm all about fixing problems, so I'm going to show you some stretches that work really, really good for ankle mobility. And some of these I was shown by Zach Tellender, who's an Olympic weightlifting coach, and I love that guy's channel. Now, this is a really, really easy one. You just get in the seated squat position, and you get your elbows on your knees, and you're holding a weight, and you're just rocking back and forth on the ankles, allowing them to stretch. Deep stretch. Now, most of us, when we do this, what do? We put our elbows in between our knees, and we spread our legs out, which is, like kind of a groin stretch. I mean, that's awesome for the hips, but this is specifically for the ankles. We're not worried about the hips. We'll get to that later. Here's a side view so you can kind of see what posture should look like. I want to be nice and straight up and down like I'm in a front squat, and I'm just going to rock back and forth. And I want to, stretch to the point where it's uncomfortable but not painful. And just kind of sit into it for a few seconds and then move back and forth. Nice dynamic stretching. People are like, they ask me, like, what's this dynamic stretching nonsense? Like, how's it different than just say stretching? The simplest answer I can give you is dynamic stretching is basically stretching with resistance. So if you're holding a weight, a la peanut butter sandwiches, you're doing dynamic. I mean, I know there's more to it than that, but that's that's the Sesame Street answer. You don't have to do these for too long. I did, I think, 3 or 4 sets, a few seconds on each side, rocking back and forth. It's going to depend on how bad your ankle mobility is. Now, a lot of guys my age, it's really bad, and they have to use squat shoes. But if you have good range of motion or decent, anyone can do this regardless of how good their mobility is. It can always be better. I would put myself at the lower end of the spectrum as something I absolutely need to work on, and this is going to probably help fix my squat depth issues. God, another major issue for me is how tight my knees are. Like, I could put all my weight on my knees and still not touch my butt to my heels until I've warmed up a little bit. Once I've done that, I can. My wife can literally sit on her feet. The same thing with my daughter. But me, no, not so much. So now we're going to see how effective that was. It's real easy. Just set up again about a foot away from something straight up and down. Try to touch it with your knee and see if the heel comes up off the ground. It's normal for the heel to come up a little bit for most people, and that is why Olympic lifting shoes were invented to begin with. But if you can get it totally flat, you're doing really, really well. And right here, my foot's pretty flat, so I'm pretty happy with that. I also perform these as a secondary stretch. I try to stretch into it and, kind of get the hips open. This is more of a hip opening movement for me than it is an ankle mobility movement, but you can kind of kill 2 birds with 1 stone. The other day I said I don't train calves specifically, and that's actually false. I do. I forgot when I'm doing my stretching routine, I do these calf stands, full body weight, and sometimes I'll hold a plate or a dumbbell. And these, depending on how what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get as high up on my feet as possible. I would say this is more of a foot movement, but it also hits the calves pretty hard. So I guess I do train calves. There you go. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I got a lot of the stuff I do for physical therapy. I obviously have a physical therapist and, obviously trainers and whatnot. But my daughter's ballet class, some of the routine, that they do. I incorporate it into my routine. And if you look at what a ballet dancer does, basically standing on their toes, it's all about ankle mobility. You start doing what the ballet dancers do, and that will sort you out right. The next thing we want to adjust is being able to keep your foot flat through the entire squat. Basically feet flat, anchored on the ground, heels don't come up, sides of the feet don't come up. We don't go, what do they call that when you collapse inwards? And a simple way to address that is to start with, basically, you're going to see the range of motion each foot has and kind of compare the two to see where one has more or the other. And then I'm going to use a band and show you guys how to practice keeping your foot flat. See, I'm not doing this just to increase the flexibility. I also want to see where my imbalances are. Most of us have built-in imbalances. Mine are really bad if you've ever had any kind of knee surgery or back surgery. But here's how you fix it. Basically, you're going to step on a band out the ball of your foot, and you're going to put tension on that band. So that way, if your foot lets go of it, it'll fling at you. And you're just going to rock your knee back and forth. And what this will do is it'll train you to keep your foot as flat as possible while you're moving that knee back and forth. And I know it looks stupid, but it's actually kind of difficult. Most people, their tendency is to rock the foot when their knees come in or out. And you want to keep that bad boy flat, and this band will help you mentally train to do that. This is more programming your noodle than it is actually to perform anything functional. Like, it's not going to increase your mobility or anything to do this, but it just teaches your brain to keep those feet anchored. Nifty little trick. I didn't come up with it. So how long do you do these for? Well, if you can't keep that band pinned down, you do them until you can. Basically, and then, if it's something that is a real issue for you, and you'll know as soon as you put pressure on that band, if you have any difficulty with the range of motion, it'll just come flinging up at you, which it does to me at the end of the set here. If you can't keep the band down, keep doing it until you can. You're basically teaching yourself to keep that foot flat. Charlie, that looks dangerous. What if the band hits you? I don't know, throw some safety glasses on. I think you'll be alright. So what are we doing here? Well, I want to see where my hip imbalance is. Which side do I favor more? So real simply, I'm going to lay flat and I'm going to try to pull my knee to my chest and keeping that other leg straight. And I'm just going to see which one goes up farther. Make a mental note of each side. Move the leg back and forth, try to test mobility a little bit. And I'm just going to mentally note which one has an easier time. Again, most of us have a built-in imbalance. If you've had hip or back surgery, you're going to probably have a noticeable one. And that's good information to have, because from there we can make adjustments to your squat to compensate for that. Aside from using these to see where your imbalances are, this is actually a useful stretch. And it can be used to help address those imbalances. I wouldn't say this one's an earth-shattering movement, but you can get a lot of useful information from it, and it feels really good. So now that we've kind of gauged where we're at with that, I want to take you guys next to one of my favorite stretches. Now this is a little bit more difficult, and it's kind of hard to explain. As you can see, I'm basically standing with a little bit of a bent in my knee, with my other leg back straight as far as possible. And I'm rolling the adjacent hip down towards the floor. So basically, the left side, the hip that's standing up, is your fulcrum. And I'm rolling it down and up on the other side. So it's like I don't know if it's hard to see, but if you look at my duckus there, you see it's rolling down and then up. And a lot of guys, like a lot of climbers, they can really, really roll, and it's noticeable. For me, it's not super noticeable because my mobility sucks, and that's something I just started doing these. These are kind of hard to master, but man, they feel great. They directly attack the piriformis, the rectus femoris, all those muscles that I'm having issues with, the sciatic nerve problems. This movement right here directly attacks all of those. And I know it looks goofy, but I'm telling you, try it. So I'm looking at the video. I need to roll more, and it's hard. It's hard for me. Everything's tight in there. You want to see the leg that's standing straight back off the ground should be rolling towards the ground. You know, I'm not just going up and down with the leg, but I'm pivoting the hips downwards. And that's stretching the leg that's standing on the ground. That's stretching that side out. The next test for imbalances is really simple. Just put your ankle across your knee and try to touch your other knee to the ground. Do it on both sides. See which one you can get farther with. And just like the first test we did where we tried to pull our knee to our chest, this will also help you to make note of or discover any imbalances you have. You know, I always talk about the back surgery I had. It wasn't back surgery. It was a back injury. So there's a difference. I was sliced open. They didn't cut me open to fix anything. But regardless, whether you got, you know, disc surgery or fusion or whatever, lumbar or whatever back surgery you've had, chances are you're probably going to have some kind of imbalances in your lower back or your hips. And this will just help discover those. And from there, that's just useful information to have. I went back and did a couple more set of these hip rolls. These feel so good. I could do them all day. It is really difficult. You know, I went and watched the video and I could see that I'm not rolling as much as it feels like I am in my head. So I'm just trying to increase the range of motion I'm working through. And it's difficult, especially when your hips are tight. You'll see some guys do these and it looks like their entire body's turning. Me, it just looks like I'm doing a quarter squat. I don't know. All right, again, so now that we've discovered the imbalances, what do we do to fix it? Well, same as before, we're going to take a plate. I'm just going to put it over my knee, and I'm going to allow that to stretch my ankle outwards. Now, before we were just rolling back and forth. This one, we're getting a little more into it. We want to have our feet almost like a sumo stance. And we're just going to allow that weight to really sink ourselves into it. And the goal here is to get that heel to touch that butt. This is not going to happen for a lot of people, including me. This is something you got to work into because this is also a really serious groin stretch. This is another movement that kills two birds with one stone, and you can use it to focus on one or the other, or in my case, I'm combining both of them. So I'm trying to stretch the knee. I'm trying to close the gap of the knee, stretch the ankle, and open the hips up all at the same time. Whereas if you don't want to do all three of those, you can just focus on one. You just put the weight on your knee and just try to move your ankle out. And that would just mean you don't spread yourself out so much. Just keep that knee in, and it'll just focus on the ankle. But the more you spread out, the more it stretches everything. Now, the reason I'm selecting all of these movements is because they're easy to do and anyone can do them with any kind of weight laying around. I'm picking stuff that has low barrier to entry and low degree of difficulty. I mean, all you're doing is putting a weight on your knee and stretching. That's it. You do it with a sandbag. You can do it with a water bottle. You could pick your kids up, sit her on your knee, whatever. What do you got laying around? So now that we've done all that, we need to test it out. One of the hardest things for most people to do is a full ass to grass squat with weight overhead, keeping them arms stretched out, like a snatch grip, or standing press squat. I don't even know what they call them when you have the weight pressed out and you do a squat. That is super difficult for most people to keep that weight overhead and keep the spine erect and get ass to grass. And it's a huge stopping point for most people that are trying to learn how to snatch or to power, do like Olympic cleans, that kind of thing. This is very difficult. And if you think I'm lying, try it out. Hold a weight over your head, the arms up over your head, and do an ass to grass squat and feel what happens to your back. For most people, this is very difficult. But if you got those ankles and them knees worked out, it becomes super easy. Matter of fact, that's the test I want you guys to do. Grab a bar, get in the snatch, and do an ass to grass squat. Can you do it? And when you try to do it, feel what happens. Do it with squat shoes, do it without. You tell me if it's easy or not. Now, the beauty about all those stretchings we just did in the warm-ups is it also really works a lot for the hips. So I'm going to finish intentionally working my hips off. I'm going to do a little bit of dynamic stretching. And this is easy. You just kind of get in the splits position and you brace your feet up against something that will prevent you from sliding on the floor. It could be a weight. It could be a permanent structure. You put your foot up against something that's immovable, and you're just going to allow that weight to push you forward. And this is helpful for anyone that's trying to learn how to do the splits. This is the slow way of doing it, though. When the kids are hungry, they don't care what Dad's doing. Gotta feed me. Now, I'm pretty aggressive when I do my stretching. I'll go past that point of pain, well into the discomfort area. But for anyone who's, trying to get into it, just go to where it starts to become uncomfortable and focus on that area. That's where we want to be. We don't want to be where it's hurting. I love using these yoga blocks, man. I think I picked them up for like $5.99 at the 99-cent store, and you can get them anywhere. I suppose if you bought them from a sports store, they'd probably be $30. They're just foam blocks. You can use anything laying around. You can use pillows. Pillows are a really common one. But just anything to make it easier for you to get in those positions to where it's not painful. I'm really close to being able to do the full splits, but I'm not quite there yet. And there's a tendency I have to want to try to force things. So by me using these yoga blocks, it just kind of just helps keep me safe, I guess you could say. It just eases things into it. Man, we're at 17 minutes. I'm willing to bet not too many of you are still with me. Now, if you are still with me, I really, really appreciate it. I want you guys to really try this whole routine. Try the whole thing, start to finish. A few sets of each. Tell me if you're at the end of it, you don't have a definitive improvement in your ankle mobility and just things feel better all around. I don't know what else to say. I love you guys. If you find any of this useful, hit that subscribe, throw me a subscription. See you on the battlefield.